Okay, first image up here. All right, so my intentions with this photo are to keep everything as simple and clean as possible. That's the goal here. This is a minimal image, right? Minimalist image, I should say. So first things first, let's straighten it out, right? You can see that in focus sand line there. So we're going to straighten that out using the straighten tool here in Lightroom. And then I'm just going to offset it just a little bit more. It's pretty close to the composition I wanted. And there we go. All right, exposure looks pretty damn good, but I think we could punch up those highlights just a little bit with the highlight slider there. Just so, look, we go from there to there, get a little bit more in that. And I mean, damn, there's not much else to do here at all with the entirety of the image. Let's give it a little bit of a saturation boost. There we go. I think we're done, but let's take it into Photoshop. I'm going to smooth out just a couple of things with some basic cloning. All right, so in Photoshop, brand new blank layer. Let's grab the clone tool, make sure it's on all layers. And we're going to go with a lower opacity. I'm just going to use my graphics tablet here, but I'm going to sample off to this side and then just kind of fade that in. Sample off to the right there and then just kind of fade across there. And I'm basically just looking to sort of blend that. There was like a white spot there. I just want it to sort of blend away slightly, right? So from there to there, right? Just kind of smooths things out. I mean, if we're going to get real picky, I'm going to then grab the spot removal, the spot healing brush, make sure it's on sample all layers, content aware, and hit that. That's the shadow of the bird there, his foot. So I like that. And then I think the one last thing I can think to do is to go to the curves adjustment layer. We'll go to the blue channel and we'll add a little bit of blue. So we'll put a point in and move it up to the left. And then I will go to the red channel, put a point in about the same area and move it down and to the right very minimally, just to make it a little cyan, maybe not quite that much. All right, we're going to invert that mask. So Command I, and then watch this. I'm just going to go back to the background layer here, select subject. It should grab that bird, absolutely no problem. Then we're just going to do an inverse of that selection. So we flip it to the background, back to our mask on that curves adjustment layer. I'm going to hide that selection by pressing Command H. And then we're going to grab our brush tool. So grab the brush tool, bigger brush, paint with white there, and we'll just go right through those areas that were blue and just kind of give them a little bit more. And then make sure it doesn't get down onto the sand too much there. So then before, after, there we go. Just a little bit more richness. There is just sort of that spot sun catch light. Let's see if we can get a little something more out of it. So another curves adjustment layer. Lift that curve up pretty high. Invert it. Really small brush now. And we're painting with white. So make sure white is your foreground color. And then we're just going to come across there. And watch. I'm going to paint in the whole upper half there. I don't want it to stay that way, but I just wanted to get it selected first. Then I'm going to switch to black. A little bit bigger brush. And then we'll just fade it off the top there. So it looks like it's just kind of in like that upper kind of portion there, but not the entirety of it. Basically, we also just wanted to get that white dot to be a little bit brighter. There we go. That's it. We're going to save and close that. I don't think you need to see a before and after. It didn't change that much, but there's our final image. Nice and clean. Beach feeling to this, right? There's some shells. There's also a little bit more of that foam line coming in there. The wave feels a little bit closer. And there's a little bit more warmth overall. So that's what I want to maintain. I want to do some good contrast with the warm sun on the bird, maybe even warm up the sand a little bit, the warm light hitting the foam line, and then we'll get the deep blue cools in the ocean there. And I want to maintain these. I just don't like the dark one. Like these all look nice to me. This like, they kind of match the browns, the whites in the bird. I know there's black in the bird, but something about that dark one just kind of grabs my attention in a negative way. So first thing, I'm going to rotate for straight. I guess we can ditch the one on the right there just to make this composition better. And something like, yeah, there, feels good to me. Feels pretty level. The water line coming in there isn't very level. I can't even see an in-focus sand line. And we're just basically trying to keep that roughly straight back there. Although it's a wave, it could be coming in at any angle. All right, just like the previous one, let's punch the highlights up a little bit more. I'm just going to warm this thing globally slightly. Okay, so you can see we got less blue in the water in the background. I am going to go just a little bit lighter. And for this one, I'm going to punch up the shadows. I don't like what that did with the sand there. So let's do that. Did it help anywhere on the bird? Whoops, wrong slider. Here we go. Let's check that out. Yeah, it did give me a little bit more detail on the bird that I wanted, so let's do a subject select. And then we will lift those shadows pretty far, and then I'm going to drop the blacks a bit. So let's zoom in here on the head and watch what that does. Before, after. Yeah, see, I like that. And then watch even back here on these feathers, before, after. Just gives a little bit more life into those areas, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. All right, next up, we're going to create a linear to get this water in the background a little bit more blue. We're going to follow the line of the water there, and then we're going to subtract with the subject. Make sure the bird's not getting adjusted here, and then we just cool off that background tone to get those blue water tones in there. And then we're done in Lightroom. So into Photoshop we go, so we can remove that. I think it'll just be easier to do in Photoshop. I know it's possible to do here in Lightroom, but I always just find I have a little bit more control. All right, so first things first, create that blank layer. I'm going to try using this spot healing brush. So we'll grab that from right there, content aware, sample all layers. We're going to make a big brush. Remember, the hardness of the brush should always be 100 on this. I just find that to work better. So we're just going to paint over this whole area there. All right, there, it got rid of it. It left a weird mark, and if I hit it again, it'll probably stay weird. Actually, it got a little better. We'll do it one more time. There, not bad. It's still a little sketchy in there. So now I come back with the clone stamp tool, and then I just sample here and smooth out those couple of areas that were just a little weird, and we're done. Just as easy as that. Clean that up quite nicely. Damn, I really like this. I don't think there's much else to do. I love the little mud sand drop there. It's just like a perfect ball just hanging in midair. Maybe the bird can use just a tad more contrast. So let's do curves. We'll lighten it up just a little bit. Drop the blacks there for contrast. Invert that. And then we'll just zoom in. Paint that in with white here. Just a little bit there. Definitely somewhere at the back. Maybe a little bit on the white of the bird. And then let's look at that before, after. Yeah, it just gives a little bit of punch. I don't like it right here, so I'm going to switch to black and paint it out. But I do like it more on the head and those areas around that. So there we go. Done with that one. Again, we're just going to save and close. I don't think you need to see the before and after on that. Again, it's pretty much exactly what we had in that first original image because the light was beautiful. I happened to get a really good exposure there. Not a big adjustment needed to be made. All right, let's jump over to the next image. Oh, yes, I know. It's a gull, but come on, look at that laughing gull. He's a stunner. This image has some potential. I really like the look of this photo. First thing we do, I think this is going to be tough. I'm going to try to go straight on the bubble line here. It does. It makes the water line feel kind of backwards back there, but all right, so here's what we're going to do instead. Like, because watch, if I go level through the middle of that, look how crooked that bubble line feels like it is coming in. And it's not bad, but I think we can get both of them straight. So check this out. We're going to go down to lens correction. Oh, here, transform, sorry. And we're going to go with the horizontal. And watch, we're going to, oh wait, that's not it. Is it? Is that the one I want? No, that just stretches it out. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I thought there was a way to do, yeah, that just stretches. That's rotate aspect. No. All right. I thought there was a way to like skew it there, but we'll do it with these guidelines. Watch. So we're going to drag one straight through here. Okay. And then we're going to drag the second line straight through these bubble line here. And then there. It just made both of those perfectly level. So there we go. All done. So watch. We go from there to there. So we've basically just shifted perspective with it. And watch the bird. It didn't really distort the bird's shape too much or anything like that, so I don't have to worry about it. So now I have a perfectly level line there and a perfectly level line in the background. Whoops, didn't mean to zoom in. But there we go. That looks really good to me. All right, let's get some more detail on that gull. So we'll lift up those shadows. Then we will drop those blacks for richness and vibrance and color. The whites can probably take just a little bit more. So watch, we'll punch those highlights up just a tad. There we go. Ever so slight kick of saturation there. And in fact, I don't think there's anything else to do that. I do, however, want to get rid of that, and I want to enhance that bubble line across there. So let's do those things in Photoshop. I mean, come on, these gulls are stunning. Look how clean those colors and lines are on them. It's a really pretty bird. In non-breeding plumage, though, I agree. They look pretty dull. Okay, new blank layer, clone stamp tool, all layers, sample over here, and we're just going to kind of fade out that dark smudge over there, making sure we don't kind of overlap down into those bubbles. And there's a little bit of darkness over there, so a little bit smaller brush, because again, I do not want to hit any of those bubbles, or I also don't want to hit the bird's feathers there, but I do want to just kind of minimize out those dark smudges back there. There we go, looking good. Okay, let's go more blue on the background, or at least the upper half with the water and the sky. So we're going to add a curves adjustment layer I just did. Then we go to the blue channel. We lift the blue up just a tad. Then we go to the red channel, drop that down just a point or two. Looking good. Invert that mask. Command I, Control I on Windows. Back to the background layer. Select, subject. Inverse that selection. I'm going to hide it with a Command H or Control H on Windows. Get the paintbrush. We're painting with white, big brush, and then we just paint that in up top half there. Get that thing looking nice and blue back there. And I would say there's a little bit of blue hint in the bubbles there, so let's paint through that as well. And just kind of give that a little bit more taste of that water vibe. It actually looks a little weird over here, so I'm going to deselect, and then I'm just going to paint with black over that side. That one over here doesn't matter as much. All right, another curves adjustment layer. We are going to go up with the highlights, keep the blacks down, invert that, and then we're just going to zoom in here, small tiny brush, and then we're just going to kind of go through, make sure we're painting with white, and then we're just going to paint through these. If it goes into the background, just hit X on the keyboard, switch to black, paint it away. All right, and so we're just going to go through and hit all these bubbles like that. And like I said, if you overlap too much of an area that you didn't mean to, just go ahead and switch to black using X on the keyboard. It just toggles them back and forth. Look at that, X, X. You just keep hitting it, and it's a toggle back and forth between your black and your white, so you can mask in and mask out quite easily. That's a little bit too bright there, so I went over with lower opacity. I would say, on most of this, you can hit it with a higher opacity. I'm doing, close to 100, but I am not fully hitting it with 100. Now, when it gets softer, we can go bigger brush, softer brush. So the larger you go, look, if the hardness stays at 0, the larger the brush you make, the softer that transition edge is. So these larger brushes will just have a softer edge. And there we go. Look at that bubble line. It's probably going to be too much. Look, before, after, it is. So these areas where it's too much, we just come back in with white, low opacity, right? Hit it with like 30. And then we'll just go over there, there, there. That's not too bad there. We just want this to look natural. Enhanced, but natural. And that sort of does it. There we go. All right. Anything else to do on the bird? Let's see if we can punch up that beak a little bit. That beak is amazing. So another curves adjustment layer. There we go. Brighten them up. Maintain those blacks, something like that. Invert the mask. I am going to go back to that background again. Do a select subject just to keep it in the bounds of that bird. Look at that. Then we go back to that mask. Hide the selection by pressing Command H. And we're painting with our brush with white this time. And we're just going to paint over these areas. And look, see how I can use like a nice big brush? And I don't have to worry about going into the background. Also, let's catch that eye ring with some of that. Let's pop that eye ring out of there. Show it really good. And then we can always just hit that little sunset reflection in there. So look at that. Before, after. So here's the total before, after. Looking really good. Nice. It might be a bit much on the inside of the bill there as I turn that on and off. So I'm going to switch to black. And then just kind of tone it down on the inside of the bill there. There we go. Before, after. Look how clean that is. Beautiful colors. So we'll save that. I will do a total before and after on that one for you. It's not going to be a massive change. None of these are because the light was just stunning. And that's what happens when you get Great conditions, great location, and cooperative, semi-cooperative birds, right? I had to work a little bit for these guys, but it wasn't too bad. So let's reset that raw file. And you can just see the difference. Like, look at the color that we got out of this. Just nice and clean, vibrant, rich. And we went from that, which looks a little dull, to that, which has our wonderful color and perspective cleanup. Cool. On to the next one. All right. I love this one with how the additional birds are flying in from the background. Not sure about that one, though. I might ditch that bird. And then we just got to do a little color cleanup here. You can see how there's a lot of that blue showing in the shadows, which I'm not much of a fan of. So let's start with a crop. I am just going to leave this one crooked because I feel like I shot it pretty level. And if we level out that sand there, I feel like, well, I thought it was going to make everything else look crooked, but it actually didn't. So maybe we just go level there. Yeah, that actually does look better. Yeah, all right. I thought it was going to make the background feel crooked, but everything's so out of focus back there because it was shot at what? Yeah, 2.8. Next up, we're going to warm that white balance. I'm just trying to do that to get to the point of getting rid of that blue. We can leave a little bit of cooler tones in the shadows, but it shouldn't be that blue. Plus, it really was this warm, golden, beautiful light coming in where it was hitting the bird there. Next up, lift those shadows. Look at all that detail we get back, but drop those blacks to maintain that contrast. Watch this change. So right after the temperature change, right? So from there to there. See how much more detail we got back, but watch the blackest of areas, right? Before, after. Before, after. Do you see how it still maintains contrast? Watch what happens if I don't drop the blacks. Look how washed out that looks. You drop those blacks in there, though, and we get that contrast back, yet we still got more detail in our shadow areas, which is exactly what we're trying to do with that. Okay? All right, so now we need to get some of that blue back in the background. I'm just going to do that in Photoshop. It's going to make it easier for me, I believe. And let's see, anything else here? Maybe just a tad lighter on the exposure. Something like that. I think is pretty good. All right, into Photoshop. Let's do a little bit of cleanup now. So new blank layer. We start with our clone tool. I think I want to leave that little rock. Something about it I kind of like, but this is what's getting me. It's like there's something in the foreground here, and then it blends into a background, but we have to watch this in focus line of sand. So here's what we got to do. We got to clone just along it here. So on your clone source palette, if you don't see it, it's under the window menu, clone source. Make sure that's visible. Make sure the overlay is on. By default, it usually is on. I just don't like working with it normally. But when it's on, check it out. If I sample there, I can see what I'm lining up. So I haven't clicked yet. And I can move up and down until I line it up perfectly, and then I click. And then I'll get a smaller brush. And watch, I'm just going to go right through here. So it's paint a little bit, and I'm going to start way out here. Paint a little bit, let go. Paint a little bit, let go. A little bit, let go. A little bit, let go. Now we're going to come back in the other way. Line it up. And now light opacity, right? So maybe 20 to 30. Do one or two passes like that, and just keep kind of lightly coming in on this side. And then we'll do the same thing there to get that bottom to blend. And then we're going to come across this way up here to get rid of this bird. So I just keep clicking and painting and dragging. And then we'll come back on this side, sample that, make sure it lines up, clicking and painting and dragging, and just over and over again. And now we'll come in from this side. Let's zoom out a little bit. So we'll sample here, come in there, trying to get rid of that. And then we'll sample over here, try and get rid of this, trying to just kind of fade them together. So light opacity is the key there. And then I just keep using this big brush. Now that I have that sort of faded nicely, I'll sample from down here, and I'm just going to go right up to the edge, but I'm going to go over the bird a little bit. And then what we'll do is we'll add a layer mask. Make sure we're selected on the mask. We're going to grab the paintbrush, a harder edge brush, usually around 80. We're going to use black as our foreground color and 100% opacity. And then watch, we're just going to paint over this edge of the bird here to bring back where we painted over with a little bit of that cloning we just did. Now, if you do one of these things and go too far, just switch back to white and paint it back in, and then you can come back and make your edge again. Not a big deal. And then you're just going to want to make sure you grab a bigger brush and just paint it out all over up there. So there we go. That bird is gone. Back here, I'm not going to worry about that one so much. And Yeah, I think that's really good on the cleanup there. So next thing, let's work with some color. Let's see if we can get some of that blue back in the background. So right there, another curves adjustment layer. Go to the blue channel. Up on the blues. Let's actually go a little bit more. I'm going to overkill it, and I don't have to use it all if I don't want. And then we'll go to the red channel and just a little tiny bit of red out for that cyan look. All right, invert that mask so then it's hidden everywhere. We're going to use a big soft brush. I'm going back to the background, select subject, should grab my gull quite nicely, and then we'll do a select inverse. A Command H hides that, or Control H on Windows hides the selection. Basically, I just do that so I don't see these marching ants. I just don't like seeing them while it's there, while I'm working. They're visually distracting to me. I like seeing the image as it would be. But I do want that selection active. So now I'm painting with a big soft brush at maybe 20-30% opacity, and I'm making a bunch of passes over it again and again into these areas that I want to be a little bit more blue, but not all the areas, right? So we just want it to look like it's sort of fading. I guess it makes more sense to have a little bit more blue at the top because it would be like blue sky, but this is like the whitewash of the water, or the waves is what I'm trying to say. And same thing over there. So we don't really want to hit that with a bunch of blue. But there we go. We go from there to there. We got our nice color contrast back. Again, I don't know if there's much else to do. Maybe let's do one more curves adjustment layer. We'll punch up a little bit of lightning and then maintain contrast by putting that black point there. We'll invert that, and then we'll come in here and just paint that in some areas. Again, with the paintbrush, just painting with white. Let's hit the bill. Couple spots there. Maybe along this white, we can just make that a little bit brighter. I don't really need it down there, but just up along the neck was nice. I think we're good to go. So let's check that out. Before, after. Yeah, the color looks so much nicer, doesn't it? All right, we're going to save and close that one. We'll take a total before and after look at that. I think that removal of the distraction under there is going to be probably the best, most helpful thing there to make this image just look cleaner. It's debatable. I think a lot of people might want to take that out. There's something weird about that rock that just doesn't bother me at all. So let's go back to that, reset it. We'll take a look at both of those. And there we go. So we went from there, kind of dull, to there, beautiful, vibrant, popping colors. All right, folks, next up we have two of basically the same image, but they do have a different feel. This one obviously closer, but also fully seeing the legs on the dry sand there. This one in the water a little bit, and that reflection of the wet sand is really nice there. So we'll start with this guy, the closer up one here. Exposure looks right on. So I'm just going to punch up those shadows, drop those blacks for contrast, and then maybe give a little bit more with the highlights there. Let's see what else. You know what? Let's get a little bit more blue in the background. So I'm going to warm it up slightly globally. So that gives me the warmth in the sand down here, more warmth in the light that's hitting the bird. And then we'll do a new linear gradient. Big soft transition. Remember, we want to match the transition that's happening in the background. So without that, you can see the blue sort of, it goes from blue, and there's a big soft transition back there. So we kind of want to match that with this gradient. So we don't want to have a tight gradient like that because it wouldn't match right there. So we want to have it sort of big, soft transition like that. Okay, so then we're just going to cool that off. That gives us our blue in the background, and then we subtract the subject from that so our bird doesn't get any of that adjustment. We want to keep the bird nice and warm and golden. Done in Lightroom. Into Photoshop we go. There is not going to be much here. I'm just going to do a basic, simple clone there just to clean up that sand line somewhat. So new blank layer, just clicking that one right there. Then we grab our clone stamp tool. We're going to sample here. We still have that overlay on from the last clone. So again, in your clone source palette, just make sure your show overlay is on. And that way you can line up this in focus line of sand and clone that right over there. I did, however, just make a pattern out of it, which I do not like to do. So I will sample again, try right there, and see if that's less obvious. There's still a little pattern there, so watch. I'll sample in here and then just kind of randomly clean up that sort of pattern that I made. Don't want to let anybody know I cloned anything. And then I'm going to go back to my clone source, turn that show overlay off. Okay. This photo's done. It looks amazing. Now let's throw a curves adjustment layer on it. Brighten things. Blacks down for contrast. Invert that mask. We can use a little bit of that. We're painting with a paintbrush. So we're using the paintbrush and we're painting with white. And anywhere that you think can just sort of punch up a little bit. I don't mind the white wash down there getting a little brighter. I think the white eye line there and the eye ring can work as well. I'm going to go back to the background and do a select subject. This time I'm going to leave it on the subject. And then I can use a big brush, paint with white on the bill there to get that sort to pop without having to select it and be accurate. And then switch to black and paint the water out from in between. And then let's really accentuate that catch light. So another curves adjustment layer. And we're going to really push it up this time. Invert it. Tiny brush. We're painting with white, so make sure you're on the brush tool. Foreground is white. And then you're just going to paint through there. I will take it out of the pupil, though. So it's just on that outside edge. Look at that. And then, you know what? I will hit the spot of sun, though, right there with white. Make that really bright. So there's that catch light. There's our finished photo. Just a lovely portrait of a lovely laughing gull. We'll save that and close it. See what happens. You get close, you get good light, you get low. Everything in the background just melts away with these long telephoto lenses. And it is a very pleasing look, for sure. I do really like to show off habitat, but man, when you get light like this and a beautiful bird like that, why not just take advantage of that and make those nice, clean portraits. All right, we got the next one to do, the last image of this set with the bird in the water. It's going to be the same techniques. All right, here we are with the last image. Let's just go through that in focus water line there. I think it's pretty straight. Yeah, it didn't look like it moved much. Same as before, lift our shadows, drop our blacks, warm it a little bit so we can get that golden color on the bird and in the whites and the waves. I think the whites on this one are really good. I don't want to punch those highlights up anymore, so the exposure looks really good. I'm going to drop those blacks just a bit more for richness, and let's add some color into that background and in the water. So linear gradient right there. We're just going to cool that off, give a little bit of blue to that water, and then watch, we're going to create another linear. Check this one out. You ready? We're starting right here. Hold shift and drag down. It keeps it perfectly straight. We're going to make a nice big soft fade. Then we're going to subtract a linear off the top there so we don't make that top quite as blue. Okay? So we're going to do, watch, a big transition here, and then I'll just drag it off of there so there's a little bit of a fade. And then we're going to subtract our subject out of that as well. And so we're left with that as a mask, and you can see it sort of fades to the top, so we won't affect that as much. And then we just shift our white balance to the blue and get that beautiful popping blue color right there. Into Photoshop, we're going to go with this image. We're just going to clean up this water down here, get rid of those couple of black dots. So a new blank layer right there. We grab our clone stamp tool right there. Make sure we're on all layers. Sample to the left, paint over that. Sample to the right, make sure it blends, and then just same thing with that one. And then actually I just noticed there's a little bit of a smudge right there. That's it. That background is clean. I love what the water's doing right here around his legs. It's pretty fun. Let's just do the same thing. We'll brighten up the eye ring, the catch light, and the bill just like we did on the last one. So curves adjustment layer to do most of those things. Lift it up a bit. Drop the blacks to maintain contrast. We're going to invert that mask, so Command I, basically just flipping that mask from white to black, so it's not affecting anything. We go back to our background layer, select subject. Actually, I don't know if you have to go back to the background layer to do that. What happens if we stay there? You used to have to do that, but what happens? Yeah, it works. You can stay on that layer. I don't need to go switching around. All right, I'm going to hide that selection, pressing Command H on the Mac, Control H on Windows, and then I'm just using the regular old paintbrush and painting with white. And we're going to paint that in there. Let's see if we're getting much of a difference there. We're not. So let's go back to the adjustment and then punch up the highlights a little bit more and then less with the blacks there and see what we get. Now we're getting that nice bright kick that we want. Back onto the mask, back onto the paintbrush tool, switch to black, and then we're going to paint off of that white. It got a little too bright there, but the eye ring in the eye is really nice. I don't think that catch light needs any more. It's really visible there to begin with. And we're done. Let's save and close this. We'll take a look at all of our finished images and see how they look. Just got to wait for this thing to save. These files, these big files, man. I don't know why they got to do that with all these cameras. It's not for me. But whatever, the detail's beautiful. Okay, let's take a look at every finished image right there. That's a fun set. From an evening that didn't start out that great, it was definitely challenging out there, but beautiful light, beautiful birds, and some nice clean beach shorebird images. So there you go. That's it for that set, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something, and you can go out and put some of these, especially the shooting techniques, into practice to get beautiful shorebird photos and gulls if you so desire.